Good evening to one and all. I welcome you to the second set of talks that we have organized as a part of the National Oxygen Stewardship Initiative. We first have our Additional Chief Head Director of Cardiac Anesthesia, Dr. N.M. Kumar, to speak about the pressure swing adsorption technology of oxygen generation. Over to you, sir.
Hello.
Sir, you can start, sir.
Can I? Okay. Good afternoon to you all. Welcome all the participants. I am Dr. Kumar, as introduced by Dr. Shilma. I am the cardiac anesthesiologist. Another 20 minutes, I'll be talking to you all about the PSA oxygen plant. What is the technology and what is its need at present? Can you change the slide, please? The present day-to-day newspapers that the PSA technology plant has been introduced and installed in different government setups as well as the corporate setups. All of us would have been surprised to see that why already oxygen is available and why should we go for that. For that, the real need occurred during the COVID second wave. With the background of these reasons, we were venturing into establishing a new oxygen plant. That is, the inadequacy of the distribution network of the tanks to transport liquid medical oxygen from the point of manufacturer to the hospitals led to the major crisis during the second surge of the COVID pandemic. Actually, most of us experienced this, and this situation was the eye-opener for venturing into the 2-3 decade old technology of oxygen generation by pressure swing technology. And in our hospital, headquarters hospital itself, we have installed and commissioned 2 pressure swing oxygen technology plants to cater to the COVID need. Next slide, please. Of the PSA plant. This concept has been prevalent for decades, 3 to 4 decades. The principle of making oxygen by the pressure swing technology exists, but their basic technology remains the same. But because of the noise and the investment cost and the need of the oxygen plant, were hindering establishing this unit in every hospital, because everybody wants to be sure about the oxygen purity as well as the availability of the oxygen. So these have been the constraint for establishing these PSA plants in everyday life during the past decades. But the present situation, as I have already expressed, made us to use this as not as a primary supply, but as the secondary supply level at least. So this ensures uninterrupted oxygen supply to the hospitals, even in any logistical delay or interruption occurs. And this, the limitation of this oxygen preparation by pressure swing technology is the purity of the oxygen. That is, we can achieve up to 93% only, 93 plus or minus 3%. But whereas the liquid medical oxygen gives 99% oxygen of the medical grade, can be supplied by cylinders as well as the liquid medical oxygen. Next slide, please. So this pictorial presentation make you know what are the components and how the pressure swing technology manufactures oxygen. This system of pressure swing technology, the components are the compressor and then the filter and air dryer. These are the things. Actually, we can segmentalize the talk to make it understand better. The whole oxygen plant can be divided into 3 segments. One is the atmospheric air should be pressurized. For that, we are using the air compressors, and it should be made free of dust and particles and bacteria. So this is the filtration system. So the compressor and the filtration system comes in the first segment to know. Then the second segment is collecting this air, which is compressed in the storage, surge tank of the compressed air. Then from this compressed air
collected in the tank, this air should be pushed into the pressure swing technology. That is the heart of the PSA equipment. There, two tanks are there, which will work in a tandem manner. So this diagram, more so it clearly, next slide please. This picture make you understand better. These blue colored two tanks which are depicted in the picture are the heart of the equipment. This contains the zeolite crystals, which is going to absorb the nitrogen and release the oxygen. Then comes the third segment of the storage and supply. There, that is the next tank, which is right to the blue tank, is the storage tank of the oxygen, otherwise called the surge tank. From there, this tank will be connected to the manifold and the MPGS of the hospital. That is medical gas pipeline supply of the hospital. So this in detail I will discuss with the next line diagram. Next slide, please. As I said previously, we segmentalize into three segments. This picture clearly shows in the left-hand corner of the picture two compressors. What is the need of two compressors? Two compressors, any this one, medical oxygen supply should be uninterrupted, and we are going to use for the life-saving situations. That is why uninterrupted supply is very much required. You are making one instrument functioning and putting it into continuous usage, it may go for wear and tear. So that is why alternatively, the two compressors will keep on functioning. One will take the load, then one equipment will take the rest. Like alternatively, periodically, like time cycling or with the microprocessor control, it can be switched on in the timely manner. And this compressor, what it will do is, it will interrupt the atmospheric air. As all of us, we know that atmospheric air contains 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and the remaining trace gases. And our aim is to make this 21% to 90% at least. So for that purpose only, this manufacturing unit is functioning. So first is in these two compressors, entrap the atmospheric air, and then these compress the air. That is 1 atmospheric pressure. We are making it compressed to 10 atmospheric pressure, 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 atmospheric pressure, so that this compressed air is passed through the initial filter. In the picture it is shown, that is 5 micron filter. That is the initial dust filter which is present in the circuit. This removes all the dust in the air, and compressed air will be collected into the air chamber, which is on the right side of this segment. So this storage tank of the air, the pressure keeps on increasing when the air is pumped into this chamber. When this pressure goes to 6 to 8 bar pressure, the valve opens and this air enters into the second segment, where the this one pressure swing technology plant is there. These two diagrams with the into mark, that is the two pressure swing PSA tanks. These two pressure swing tanks are filled with zeolite crystals. Zeolite crystals are the crystals which you all know is the crystal used in the oxygen generator, which is used in the domestic as well as in the hospital usage. So these zeolite crystals are loaded in these two tanks. This pressurized air from the storage tank is pushed through these zeolite crystals. These zeolite crystals have a larger surface area, very large surface area, where this compressed air passes through this at high pressure. At the high pressure swing, what happens is these zeolite crystals absorb nitrogen and leave the oxygen in the top of the tank. So when the collected oxygen pressure goes up, this will go through the circuit to the storage, oxygen storage tank. Before entering into these pressure swing tanks, you can see the 3 filters down. They are 3 filters are the 0.1 micron filter to remove all the remaining smaller level particles, and then the moisture has to be filtered. So any moisture in the circuit, gas circuit, will endanger the life of the zeolite, number 1. Number 2 is it will endanger all the microprocessor board in the ventilatory circuits when you are put into hospital usage. And number 3, all the equipments, the valves, everything will get rusted or will get spoiled if moisture content is there. That is why this has to be, the moisture has to be removed. And then the oil vapor, whatever oil vapor is available also should be removed. The second filter does the work of this oil filtration. Then any air will have some odor and some toxic material. These are filtered by the activated charcoal filter, which is the third filter. Through this filtration system, the air enters into the zeolite tank. From the zeolite tank output, the oxygen, more than 90% oxygen is coming out of this zeolite tank, gets stored in the surge tank or oxygen storage tank. In this oxygen storage tank, when the pressure builds up to 4 to 5 bar, 4.5 bar, automatically the valve opens and the air come out of this storage tank, passes through the HEPA filter. HEPA filter is nothing but high energy, high efficiency particulate filter, having the particulate, this one filtration capacity of 0.01 micron. So this air coming out of this HEPA filter will be connected to the main oxygen pipeline in the hospital. So this way, this oxygen plant works. So I think in a nutshell, I made you people to understand what is the functioning of this oxygen plant. Next slide, please. Then, when you are, then come the technical specification of how to order or how to procure the PSA plant. So this slide shows the oxygen generating capacity of the plant. That varies from either you can speak in terms of liters or cubic meter of oxygen. So in this slide clearly shows that the minimum capacity of 83, that is around 100 liters per minute to 3000 liters per minute, you can generate oxygen. So this, for the estimated bed capacity, if you are going to procure for 100 liter per minute, it will cater only to 15 to 25 beds. Whereas if you are going to the maximum of 3000 liter capacity, you can cater to 600 to 1000 bedded hospital. So for your just idea, I kept this slide to know. Then next slide, please. Okay, then coming to the prerequisite for installation of the oxygen plant. What is the prerequisite? Or one is the space. Space, it really occupies around 7 meter to 18 meter, depending upon the model and the plant capacity you order for it. So minimum 7 into 7 meter is required, and this should be a well ventilated area, and it should not be a closed or a concreted room like. It should be a shed kind of thing with a good ventilation so that it can entrap the atmospheric air freely. And then the power supply requirement and the height required. I forgot to mention in the slide is a height requirement. The height requirement should be, the norms is 5 to 8 meter height is a minimum requirement. So 7 into 7 meter to 18 into 18 meter is the range of the area of requirement. Then comes the power supply. The power supply, because the electricity is very important to generate the oxygen, the uninterrupted power supply is required. So 20 kilowatt to 300 kilowatt is the requirement to establish these units. So depending upon the model and the generating capacity, this varies. Then if power supply is going for any failure kind of thing, the DG set, that is diesel generator backup supply, is mandatory. So that also varies from 25 kilowatt to 750 kilowatt, depending upon the model and the capacity we are going to procure. Then comes the pipeline works. Then all hospital will have the primary oxygen supply in terms of manifold cylinder or normally used cylinders or liquid medical oxygen, but all will have the connection to the main oxygen pipeline supply of the hospital. So this also to be integrated and incorporated with the main gas pipeline supply. Only thing required is the unidirectional valve that has to be put from the output of the oxygen generator to the main oxygen pipeline in such a way that this, if any failure, of this oxygen plant occurs, this can be diverted, stopped, and the main supply will be supplying the oxygen to the hospital and wards. So to make this unidirectional valve, automatic unidirectional valve, once the alarm is on, any failure is sensed by the microprocessor, this valve should be switched on automatically. This saves the life of the patients. Then comes the application or the need of these and where all these oxygen generator, I mean PSA plant can be used. The applications or uses are, one is the remote place, that is where the accessibility of trucks and the movement of the vehicles, cylinders, and the liquid medical oxygen plant, all these things are the limitation. This plant will be of very much use. For example, in a remote villages where every day you cannot take oxygen, or logistic of transporting cylinders, everything will be a difficult thing. Then this establishing this oxygen plant with the use of the available electricity is a choice. Then hill stations, then Andaman Nicobar kind of places where the logistics is a issue. Then comes the restricted sites and the sensitive sites. These are the army areas where it is highly sensitive areas where the movement of all the trucks and the accessibility of the tank and cylinders are difficult. Then the restricted sites. Restricted sites are the places where the main hospital is in the main road, where there is a lot of restriction for the space. We can't provide the adequate space for the generator to be set up in. Then these of much use. Then comes the emergency situations. It's actually the COVID made this emergency situation for us. Other things are the natural disasters, where the flood kind of situation, everything is cut off from the road is cut off. Then this establishing these plants of real use. Then the normal sites like our hospital. Then the question from us comes, why not we use this oxygen generator plant for the regular use in our hospital? We need not depend upon the supplier, and all the logistics can be removed, like the question comes to every one of our mind. So this required thing is 2-3 limitation for this also made this to be very popular, because this totally depending on one supply of having oxygen generator. Any trouble in the functioning of the machine, supply failure, and then the oxygen generation, any problem or break in the supply occurs, there is no backup supply unless you have a primary supply of liquid medical oxygen or the manifold supply is there. We are really worried that if any failure make a disaster in the hospital management. That is why this normal usage of this plant so far not established. Another important point is the economy. Definitely this consumes electricity, and the zeolite has to be replaced in the periodical manner, and then wear and tear of the equipment and maintenance. That is why this has to be worked out in detail in everyday usage manner. Then only we know how this becomes economical when compared to have a liquid medical oxygen plant. Then coming to the advantages of this over liquid medical oxygen, as we all know, this is a low pressure system. Here in the circuit, nowhere we exceed more than 10 bar pressure. Whereas when we use cylinder and liquid medical oxygen, we all know that cylinders are having even up to 100 bar pressure. Cylinders are filled. So the explosion problem is there with the cylinder transport. All these problems are removed by using this system. Another important thing is all these high pressure vessels need periodical licensing from the explosive department. These are all this plant does not require the explosive department license. These are the two advantages over usage of the liquid medical oxygen and the regular usage of the cylinder system. Next slide, please. Then another, as we all know, oxygen is a drug. and all the drug which is manufactured require license. And we manufacture oxygen in the hospital premises by this plant. So it is obvious that this requires license. But Government of India, 2015 December, they made a amendment and a separate monogram for this oxygen, PSA generated oxygen for usage, that is 93% oxygen. Otherwise, the monogram of the Indian Pharmacopoeia 2000 shows that 99% is the medical grade oxygen. 2015, this has been modified, and the monogram, special monogram has been made by Indian Pharmacopoeia for this oxygen generator made oxygen as 93%. But with few limitations and advices. That is, number one is the periodical testing of this oxygen, because there is no licensing from the department, explosive department, and there is no check of the quality is there when you manufacture in the plant. That is why Government of India clearly made this as a drug, as well as the drug regulation will work for this oxygen of PSA generated oxygen also. That is, this has to be periodically tested. The advice is every year, twice the test has to be carried out with the government approved laboratory. Now we have taken the sample and sent to the laboratory and took the certificate and kept it ready for any time inspection. And they can and draw the sample from the oxygen generator plant and put it for testing. The main important thing is the purity of oxygen is the one important thing. That is, it should certify that it should be certified that it should be 90 plus or minus 3%. And number two is it should not contain more than 300 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and it should not contain. Hello, I think I am here. I think you can hear. Hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. You are audible.
Yes. Hello. Another thing is carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide also, it should not be more than 5 parts per million. These are all the tests to be done periodically, and the tests should be kept in the hospital always for the inspection of the authority. Then next slide. Next slide, please. Then coming there, I think overall I have given the idea. Now going in detail to the components, I don't take much of the time. Another 5 minutes I will be completing. These are the in detail about the different components. The air compressor. The air compressor is used to compress the air, as we all know. Only thing, the technological revolution what occurred is the screw type compressor. Usually the reciprocating compressor is used, which make a tremendous noise. That was the biggest limitation in having this equipment in the hospital premises. With this new revolution of screw and scroll type compressors, the noise pollution is reduced. Next slide, please. This is the compressor type. To out of interest, I have shown this. This is the technology used in this PSA plant compressors. Next slide, please. This is the shows the reciprocating compressor make 85 decibel noise, whereas this makes only 76 decibel noise. Next slide, please. Then the air dryer. Here comes the importance of the refrigerated dryer, which is available in the plant. This removes the moisture content. As I already discussed, the moisture in the air will endanger the life of the zeolite as well as the life of the ventilator and all the valve and other equipment microprocessors in the PSA plant. So the air dryer is mandatory. Next slide, please. Then the air tank. Because it is a dynamic process of generating compressed air, the pulses of air keep running in the pipe. To make it uniform pressure, this storage tank is necessary. So this is the initial storage tank where the compressed air is stored. Once the pressure develops in this tank to 6 to 8 bar, the air will flow into the multi-stage filtration system. Last slide. Next slide, please. Multi-stage filtration system. It's sorry to show it has 3 filters. It is not 2 filters. And the 3 filters, one is the 0.1 micron filter to remove all the particles. Then the number 2 is the this one, oil filter. And number 3 is the activated carbon filter, which contains the charcoal. This removes the odor as well as the toxicity of the gas. Next slide, please. Then this is the heart of the PSA generator plant. This is nothing but 2 tanks having a zeolite crystal loaded. And these 2 tanks, I would like to say that why 2 tanks are required. This question can come in our mind. Why 2 tanks is, while 1 tank is running, the zeolite crystal absorbs all the nitrogen, and this will be in the collected in that tank. So half an hour, if this 1 tank is running and the oxygen is generated, the next half an hour, this tank will get switched off and the next tank will get switched on, and the oxygen is generated and it will run into the pipe. But when the first tank, which was in use, get purged in the opposite direction to remove all the nitrogen which is absorbed in the zeolite crystal. This nitrogen get exhausted through the exhaust pipe, which is separately available in the lower end of the tank. So once this nitrogen is removed and these zeolite crystals are rejuvenated for the usage for the entrapment of the nitrogen, this will be again switched on in a periodical manner. That is why the 2 zeolite tanks are required. Next slide, please. Then comes the human machine interface screen. This is of real importance, and our biomedical technician, every one of us should be aware of this, and whoever on duty technician should, every shift, they should see this screen once and then make a ledger available in the room and make an entry of the purity of the oxygen and other parameters which is noted in this human interface screen. Next slide, please. This shows clearly the purity of the oxygen first. Then comes the pressure. Any this one, high pressure in the circuit will be notified, and the flow generator has to be seen. Anything will wrong from the programmed system will show the alarm in the red signal, and it should be noted and it should be informed to the authority. And during the running hours and the running status, everything will be displayed in the screen. So the important thing is to note the purity every 12 hours in the plant. Next slide, please. And then the storage tank for the oxygen. After the zeolite tank, the generated oxygen is stored in this tank. And once the pressure is generated to the 4 bar, for 4.5 bar, from this tank, the oxygen enters into the the main gas pipeline system of the hospital. Next slide, please. Before entering into the main gas pipeline, this is the HEPA filter, which is incorporated, which has the capacity of 0.01 micron filter. And through this filter, air goes and this becomes the medical grade oxygen, so that this can be used in our patients. Next slide, please. This picture shows the established or the commissioned oxygen plant in our setup. And the carry home message is, these are the, one is, this is not the primary source of oxygen supply in any of the hospital, at least at present scenario, because this can suffix only as a backup supply, because this needs a huge investment and day-to-day cost consumed by the electricity. That is why the economicity of this has to be studied, and then only it can be put into use as a primary source. Number 2 is, all the technicians and the using people should notice the periodicity of the checking the purity of the oxygen, and it should be ledgered in the keeping the ledger is to avoid the human error, so that it's their duty to enter and keep it signed. Number 3 is the periodicity of the test certificate. Every 6 months, it should be checked and the certificate should be updated for the inspection by the authorities to avoid all the litigation problems as well as to keep up the oxygen quality. With these words, I conclude the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. If anyone has any doubts or questions regarding the topic, they can please come forward with their questions.
How frequently the zeolite crystals need replacement, sir?
Actually, there are a few 2-3 generations of crystals are available. Actually, one generation of crystal which we procured having the life of 10 years, we asked for it. Actually, there are 2 ways of supply. They can supply first generation, second generation, third generation zeolite crystals. But thing is, the cost is the difference. But what we have put the condition is zeolite crystal having the lifespan of 8 to 10 years. Now we have taken the undertaking from the firm for this 10 years lifetime. They can supply with the second generation also, but it is the scope of replenishing the zeolite crystal is by the firm. So that liberty has been given.
What is the actual establishment cost, sir, for a plant of
What we have is a 200 liter capacity, 200 liter per minute or 12 cubic meter. That is actually it is sufficient up to 75 beds. Actually, when we made the proposal for oxygen generator plant, our COVID ward was only having 75 beds. That is the thing we made the minimum capacity. And another thing is, as you asked, the cost of the thing is around 40 lakhs for the minimum capacity. And for the maximum capacity, it is more than 2 crores. That is what I learned from the suppliers. Apart from this, the maintenance cost and then the electricity cost.
As you said, it can cater up to 75 beds. If this is keeping an average of 10 liters per minute, or even HFNO, because HFNO, if you run, it will drain off all
that is the limitation of this plant. That is why the storage tank and the generating of the 4 bar pressure is required, because you cannot draw more than the speed of the generation. Then it will go for low pressure alarm and then the equipment will stop functioning. So our manufacturing unit of PSA, what we have is only the capacity of 200 liters per minute. Then you can, at a time, you can use only maximum 3 HFNOs, 180 liter. Usually we will open with a maximum of 60 liter per minute in the HFNO. So we are limited to the usage of only 3 HFNOs.
Okay, sir.
If we use this one non-rebreathing mask or mask oxygen and supplement with, then we can't use even 3 HFNOs. That is the limitation.
Yes, sir.
And
so
another limitation what I come across while going through the literature and on day-to-day usage is we cannot run the ventilator with 100% oxygen. Because 100% oxygen, the pressure required to run the ventilator is 4.5 bar. So this pressure which is generated swings between 4 to 4.5 bar. So we can achieve maximum of 80 to 90% oxygen only with the ventilator, with this pressure generator, pressure swing oxygen generator. So for this, I asked the firms, they are telling that we can put a boost up compressor, which add-on compressor make the pressure enhanced and it can be supplied like.
So in case we are using this as an emergency, first thing is we should switch off all the HFNOs, and ventilators might not be supported with this.
Absolutely. No, so ventilator will consume very less only.
Yes, sir.
Ventilator ordinarily will consume not more than 12 liter per minute. Actually, if we keep 50% oxygen, it will only consumes around 8 liter per minute.
Yes, sir.
What is the flow we keep in ventilator? Maximum is 20 to 30 liter.
Yes, sir.
Because our flow, what is the peak flow required in the ventilator is the 3 times the minute volume. Minute volume is 8 to 10 liters. We keep a maximum of 25 to 30 liter as the peak flow rate. When you give the peak flow rate of 30, you keep the oxygen supply of 50%, it will be only 15 liters per minute. So you can run the ventilator of 15, 200 liter by 15. That many ventilators can be run with this oxygen generator. Only HFNO is the limitation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful
Thank you.
presentation and interactive session also. Shall we move on to the next speaker, sir?
Yes,
So
sir,
one
please.
more doubt here, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, whenever there is humidity, that is now there is rainy season, the purity of the PSA plant is reduced drastically. Usually, if it is if it shows 90 to 93%, on moisture days it shows 80, 85. Is there something to do with the?
That is true. Then that means the refrigerator filter, what is in the first stage of the filtration? One is the particulate filter of 5 micron, followed by one refrigerator filter is there. That will remove the moisture. The principle of this equipment is making the air temperature reduced to -3, what is called the dew point, where all the moisture in the air will be changed to water. And this water will be dipped down from the refrigerator dryer. This water will get removed. And this filter functions effectively. The outcoming air from the refrigerator filter should not have any moisture content. So if the percentage of the oxygen is coming low, this is one of the reason also. So the refrigerator filter has to be checked.
It has to be checked. Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, we shall move on. If anyone has any other questions, they can definitely drop it in the chat box. So we'll be answering later on. Next we have our physicians, Dr. G. Arun Kumar and Dr. Satish Anand, to deliver a talk on oxygen therapy in COVID-19, the targets to be maintained, and the various oxygen delivery devices. Over to you, Arun, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Let's share the screen. Everyone able to visualize the screen? Dr. Arun, can you see the screen?
Sir,
You are sharing the sir.
I will share my screen, sir.
Okay.
Sir, is it visible, sir?
Yes, visible. Please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. We will be seeing about the oxygen therapy in COVID-19 infection. As Kumar sir previously told that how difficult it is to procure and produce oxygen, we must be well aware of how to use the oxygen in COVID-19 patient and as well as in general. So I will specifically take you through the oxygen therapy in COVID-19 infection. So the learning objectives in this session will be the indication of oxygen therapy, oxygenation targets, type of oxygenation devices, and ventilation strategies and complications associated with oxygen therapy in COVID-19. In COVID-19, as everyone of us will know that O2 requirement is very, very important. And the physiology behind the need for oxygen in acute hypoxemia in COVID are due to many of these conditions, which could be ventilation perfusion mismatch, a diffusion impairment, either a shunt or low FiO2 or a hypoventilation. The etiologies in COVID, basically it is a COVID pneumonia, but the other causes could also lead to O2 requirement in COVID, like aspiration, acute airway obstruction, pulmonary edema, COPD exacerbation, pulmonary embolism, and pneumothorax. Because all these medical complications can occur in a COVID patient. So what is the indication for occurring of sudden dyspnea? There is a sudden involvement of lung. There is a rapid progression of the pneumonia or ARDS in COVID-19, or coexisting heart conditions like MI or heart failure, or a pre-existing chronic lung conditions, or basic anemia. So oxygen targets. So when we come to the oxygen targets, not all patients require 100%, need to be achieved 100%. Not all patients need to have a 100% SpO2. So we must know the target which need to be set to a patient. So as like any drug, when we prescribe, we must prescribe in the case sheet that what is the target required for the patient. So it depends upon the severity of the disease and as well as the comorbid conditions of the patient. Say for example, in a moderate disease, the target would be anywhere between 92 to 96%, and whereas in a COPD patient, it is 88 to 92%. Whereas in severe cases, a target should be SpO2 to be targeted more than 90% in a non-pregnant adult, and target should be around 92 to 96% in a pregnant patient. So these are the few daily oxygen delivery devices which we have in our hospital, like nasal cannula, simple face mask, partial rebreather, NRBM, Venturi mask, high flow nasal oxygen called HFNO, non-invasive ventilation and invasive ventilation. So first we will go by one. First is the nasal prongs. Nasal prongs, as we all commonly know, that's the nasal cannula, which is a simple tube-like structure which helps to deliver the oxygen to the patient. So stable patient with a minimal requirement of oxygen can get oxygen through this nasal cannula, but the respiratory rate should not be more than 20 to 22 per minute. It is very useful for the patient because it does not interfere with the eating, speaking of the patient. So this is usually well tolerated from the patient point of view. And it also acts as a reservoir of 50 ml capacity of reservoir can be held in this nasal cannula. And the FiO2 of calculated roughly when the FiO2 is 20 plus 4 into O2 in liter per minute. So the maximum achieved is 0.4% of FiO2 with a flow rate of 6 liters per minute. So we should not give more than 6 liters per minute through nasal cannula. So the high flow rate can cause dryness of the nasal mucosa, which in turn can cause secondary supranodal infection in the nasopharynx. And second is the simple face mask. A lightweight simple face mask is the oxygen inlet and a face mask that carries the oxygen, and it delivers at the flow rate of 6 to 10 ml, 10 liters per minute. And there is an additional capacity of 100 to 200 ml of oxygen can be kept as a reservoir. The problem is the flow rate should be at least 6 liters per minute so as to wash out the exhaled gases. If we keep the O2 flow rate as less than 6 liters per minute, then the patient will keep on rebreathing the exhaled air. So as I said previously, the nasal cannula up to 4 to 6 liters you can keep, but when you place it onto the simple face mask, it should be minimum of 6 liters per minute so that the exhaled gas is removed from the mask. And this is a partial rebreather mask. This is a reservoir bag will be there, and it is attached to a face mask. This is a basic thing, and it will deliver FiO2 of 60 to 80% at a flow rate of 6 to 10 liters per minute. And in this, only the first 1/3 of the expiratory gas is exhaled back into the reservoir, and the next 2/3 is exhaled out via the side ports. The one difference between the partial rebreather and the non-rebreather mask is the presence of valve. Due to the presence of valve, there is no rebreathing occurring in the non-rebreather mask. So non-rebreather mask can deliver practically anywhere between 60 to 80% of oxygen, and the cell flow rate can be set anywhere between 6 to 15 liters per minute. Both these partial non-breather and non-breather mask does not reduce the work of breathing. So it only gives the oxygen, and the work of breathing does not reduce significantly by these two masks. And next comes the high flow nasal cannula. The high flow nasal cannula can generate a high flow oxygen rate at the rate of 40 to 60 liters per minute with a FiO2 of 100%. So the advantages of this is it's a small pliable nasal prongs and it has a inbuilt warming and humidification system in place. And added on to that, due to the high flow rate, it gives additional minimal CPAP support, that is a continuous positive airway support to patients, which allows them to eat and speak. So this is somewhat which can be used in before the non-invasive or invasive ventilation is being used. And one thing is always try to give more
participants இருக்காங்க
hello,
Alfonso Kumare, Dr. Revati, Dr.
can you hear me? Yes, sir. The one advantage of this is we can be using it as a CPAP. So it is better to use a high flow rate and keep the low FiO2. So I will tell in the next slide how to adjust the HFNO settings. So there are two parameters that need to be set in the HFNO. First is the flow rate and second is the FiO2. So first we have to set up the flow rate of the machine. So it ranges from 55 to 60 liters per minute. Typically we will set anywhere between 20 to 30 liters, and then the FiO2 is set to achieve the desired target of the patient SpO2. The flow rate can be maximized if needed with an attempt to keep the FiO2 less than 60. So as far as possible, we have to try to increase the flow rate and then adjust the FiO2 so that the oxygen consumed will be utilized judiciously. Say with the FiO2 of 60%, the machine will use 60% of oxygen and remaining 40% of the air. So next comes the non-invasive ventilation. Non-invasive ventilation is providing patient a ventilatory support without intubating the patient. So it is indicated when the hypoxemia is refractory to all the other oxygen ventilatory devices, oxygen devices which we have discussed previously, and it acts as a bridge to intubation, and this actually reduces the work of breathing. But we have to be very well aware of the contraindications, that are the inability to protect airway. This should not be put in a comatose patient, and when there is an excessive secretion or patient is having a recurrent vomiting, or there is we expect a vomiting in this patient, don't use non-invasive ventilation, because this can make the patient aspirate and patient can suddenly collapse before even we recognize the collapse of the patient. So, and one more indication is patient is this persistent worsening or failure to improve in spite of non-invasive ventilation, we should not hesitate to go ahead for the intubation and mechanical ventilation. So advantages is minimal risk of exhaled air dispersion, low chance of leakage, and effectively it lowers the work of breathing. So there are a lot of ways which with non-invasive ventilation can be achieved. Through the ventilator, you can give a non-invasive ventilation, but the delivery devices can range from oronasal to nasal, like pillows, total face mask, mouthpiece, and helmet. In our hospital, we commonly use the oronasal mask for non-invasive ventilation. And additionally, there's a question that does NIV specifically help or harm in COVID-19 patient? There are a lot of studies saying that there is 50% chances of failure. Actually, these failures are attributed to the rapid worsening of ARDS in COVID patients, and it somewhat makes us to delay the intubation. So patients who really need intubation are kept on NIV for a very long time. So at one stage of time, even intubation might not help for this patient. So we should be using this non-invasive ventilation very judiciously, and we must judge when is the correct time for the patient to get intubated. So non-invasive ventilation may harm the patient in two different mechanisms. One is the lack of ability to control the tidal volume, because whatever the inspiratory effort the patient is putting, the tidal volume will be delivered, and because of the pressure and support what we give through the NIV, it can cause barotrauma. And the second important thing is possible delay in intubation and mechanical ventilation. We should not hesitate to intubate a COVID-19 patient in case it is really needed. So this should be, once the NIV is put, the work of breathing and other things should come down. In case there is worsening of the clinical features or the oxygenation in the patient, then one should never hesitate to go ahead for a mechanical ventilation. So strict contraindications for NIV are uncooperative or extremely anxious patient. So certain group of patients, even they will be very uncooperative for NIV. If you put them on NIV due to fear and lot of other things, sympathetic activity, lot of other changes will occur and it will in fact worsen this patient. So such kind of patient, even if you can they can be put on HFNO, so that even with a saturation, target saturation of 90 or even 88% for 2 or 3 days, they respond to the HF high flow nasal oxygen better when compared to you are giving a NIV and achieving a target of 92 to 96. So one thing we have to be very careful using NIV is patient should be comfortable. So once you put in NIV, the work of breathing should come down and especially the respiratory rate should come down. If these doesn't, these two issues are not addressed, then that patient is not a candidate for NIV. Either we should step one step down, like go in for HFNO and make the patient comfortable, or you should step one step ahead and intubate the patient if the patient is still not responding to our NIV. And of course, the other indications are reduced consciousness, inability to protect the airway, unstable cardiorespiratory system, trauma, facial burns, facial injuries, and pneumothorax with bronchopleural fistula. These are the absolute contraindications. And intubation and mechanical ventilation, this is a very debated topic, and we have to outweigh the risk versus benefit before considering a patient whether he needs an intubation or he doesn't need an intubation. Mechanical ventilation is a very useful modality for patients who are unable to sustain the level of ventilation necessary to maintain the gas exchange functions, that is oxygenation and carbon dioxide elimination. So mechanical ventilation, two things we do. One is we give oxygen to the patient, and number two, we reduce the work of breathing. So what are the indications to switch from a NIV to a invasive ventilation? So as I said previously, there is an increasing drowsiness or an increased work of breathing, or the oxygen requirement is increasing, or if the patient is having any hemodynamic instability, like present patient suddenly developed a hypotension or goes in for a shock or have any arrhythmias or any cardiac events, any hemodynamic instability, it's an indication for us to shift the patient from NIV to invasive ventilation. And of course, vomiting and risk of aspiration and rapidly progressing radiological severity and falling respiratory system compliance and increasing need of PEEP. That is PEEP, if it requires, it is elevated more than 10 centimeters if it is requiring to maintain the oxygenation, then we have to consider invasive ventilation. And increasing minute ventilation, that is more than 10 liters per minute. This occurs due to usually increased respiratory rate, causing increase in minute ventilation. And ventilation needed in COVID-19, the possible indications might be impending airway obstruction, signs of unsustainable work of breathing. This should be carefully watched for, because the patients on NIV suddenly go in for unsustainable work of breathing. So always these kind of patients put on CPAP or any other NIV should be monitored at least with the help of a paramedical person, either the ratio of 2:1 or 3:1, not more than that. So that must be given an individual attention, because even the ventilated patients can be better off without monitoring, but these patients can arrest in front of your eyes if not observed for a proper period of time. Refractory hypoxemia, hypercapnia, and acidemia. And additional consideration is like, does the illness trajectory predict a deterioration? Do you predict a downhill course? If it is early in the disease itself, patient requirement, oxygen requirement is high, then that patient will be an indicator, is a candidate for invasive ventilation. And of course, are there any difficulties for endotracheal intubation is anticipated, and hemodynamic instability, and these kind of things are the additional consideration we need to have. And one more thing is, whenever the patients are intubated, the very basic mechanism of extubating is the patient is the intubated issue has to be addressed. So as far as COVID, as we have seen in the past 1.5 to 2 years, the recovery of the injured lung will take a very long time. So these patients, if they are an ideal candidate for intubation, they really cannot be extubated. So the way ahead is go for an early tracheostomy, and if we plan for an early tracheostomy, then these patients can easily be brought to a lesser mode of invasive ventilation, and these patients can be given a chance to recover. If we don't do early tracheostomy and we continue to keep the patient on mechanical ventilation, then they will have all secondary complications secondary to intubation and mechanical ventilation. And the ventilator management, it is still now unclear whether the COVID-19 is associated with any distinct form of ARDS that would benefit from a new strategy. But we will always go with the old strategy for the ARDS, that is to address the basic issue. So we go for a low tidal volume based ventilation. So ARDS and invasive mechanical ventilation, it can have the patient, the main problem is the inflammatory problem, which can cause to non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, and it could be mild, moderate or severe. So the alveolar recruitment maneuvers should be used to achieve the target saturation and decrease the work of breathing. So first thing is we must increase the PEEP. Positive end expiratory pressure should be increased, and patient should be prone, like awake proning. Here the patients put on ventilator can be also be prone. This requires manpower, proper training, but if done, we have seen benefits on prone positioning, because it will reduce the overinflated lung, promotes the alveolar recruitment, and reduces the VQ mismatch. And the lung protective ventilation, this is very, very important, and we have to have a low tidal volume ventilation, and target tidal volume is anywhere between 6 to 8 ml per kg of predicted body weight. The charts gives the predicted body weight, how it need to be calculated, and we have to set the PEEP to prevent the lung de-recruitment. So if the plateau pressure of more than 30 centimeters of water is there, so we must, if that is the scenario, then we must consider reducing the tidal volume and reducing the PEEP. Allowing a high plateau pressure in patients with obesity or reduced chest wall complaints can be accepted. Otherwise, the plateau pressure should be, if it goes to more than 30 centimeters of water, these things should be addressed. Otherwise, the patient can develop trauma secondary to the invasive ventilation. And what are the potential detrimental effects associated with PPVs are? It can cause a reduced venous return and afterload, causing hypotension and reduced cardiac output, barotrauma. Of these, very important things are air trapping and barotrauma. All other, even though it is theoretically written, we do not see so much reduction in BP if the patient's BP is holding good. So the main thing is ventilator associated lung injury and barotrauma. As I said, prone positioning, we must use prone positioning for at least 16 hours per day, and it need to be carried out by special group of trained nurses and respiratory therapists. So as I would like to conclude by saying that medical oxygen should be treated as a drug. So we must write as if we are writing a drug. So we must write how much oxygen to give, through which maneuver it should be given, what device should be used to deliver the oxygen, and what is the target we need to achieve for that person. So use of oxygen should be judicious, because the last COVID wave, second COVID wave, we almost ran out of oxygen in most of the places in our country. So we should be very well be aware of how to use oxygen, and we must avoid wastage of oxygen. So if wherever it is possible, we must actually try to bring down the use of oxygen, and it will not be a bad idea in case there is a patients, more number of patients are there in oxygen or on oxygen support. It is not a bad idea to put the oxygen nurse specifically to ensure and monitor whether the oxygen usage for all the patients are optimally used. So it is, I would like to suggest that in case our hospital, like second wave, we happen to have during this time, then we need to have a dedicated oxygen nurse just to monitor the appropriate usage of oxygen. And devices should be selected based on the need of the patient, and each device has its limitation and we have to use accordingly. And as I said, mechanical ventilation can be a double-edged sword. So it should be used appropriately. So intubating everyone early can also be disastrous. So ventilation strategy need to be individualized, and it should be, in case there is a doubt, it need to be discussed with the physician and the anesthetist. So combined team effort will have a good benefit for the patient. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you,
Arun,
sir.
comparatively from the last wave, this wave the oxygen requirement for the patients is definitely less, no, Arun?
Madam, this is very, very early, madam, because around the 5th of 2nd to 5th of January only we have seen patients, cases are starting to rise. So the complications are anywhere expected to occur between 7 to 14 days after the initial rise. So only after Pongal we will know whether what kind of wave we are at present in. Because the mortality, the real mortality will be anywhere between around 14th of this month to 21st or 30th of this month. Those two periods will give us the clear idea whether this is a high mortality wave or a low mortality wave. It is very, very too early to comment upon the mortality of the ongoing wave.
But overall, they are telling in TV and all, this wave seems to be very mild. The oxygen requirement in other hospitals are very less, and patients' home quarantine is more than the hospital admission. All those things. That's why I'm asking.
Yes, madam. Of course, I agree to that. If it is predominantly Omicron variant, which is as in media and other places they are telling, if it's a predominantly Omicron variant, which is causing a mild infection, then it would be better to have such a wave, because it in fact acts as a natural vaccination itself. But the Delta variant is still in circulation. So we might lose patients with the Delta variant, and we might not be able to pick up the Delta variant patient if they are not properly monitored during the home isolation period.
Oh, day before yesterday, our health minister concluded that 85% of the variants in Tamil Nadu seems to be Omicron. So they stopped doing the S genome drop in Tamil Nadu. So it is almost every other person tested is Omicron. We are not testing for Omicron year after.
Yes, madam. But the remaining 15%, if you take 1 crore population is affected, the 15% means there is a 15 lakh people will be affected with the Delta. So of the 15 lakh, if you calculate at least 10%, 1.5 lakhs of patients still will require ventilatory support and high end of invasive ventilations, that kind of thing. So for the government to say it is on a large scale, it is acceptable, and because people need not worry and other things. But as a medical professional, we should be ready to handle this 15% of the people, because now the problem will be, we will have a tendency to move these 15% of the people by saying that it is only a simple infection. So we must still be very vigilant, like second wave. If we follow all the protocols and all the home isolation follow properly, then the 15% people can be easily picked up and they can be admitted and given proper treatment. So the government is telling that 85% of the people need not be admitted in hospital in a panic mode. So you remain in the home, and the remaining 15% of the people need to be identified and picked up. Not all the 15% will require hospitalization. Of that, only 10% will require.
Okay. But why there is so much of increase of cases in America and Italy and all? Today they are showing in Italy it is 3.5 lakhs, America 2.75 lakhs with the death rate of 2,200 something and all. Is it still the Delta variant there is predominant and not the Omicron?
That data I do not have, madam, but the possibility of Delta being causing the mortality is very, very high, because even the Delta numbers are low. The mortality among the Delta is high.
Also, it is Delta. Because of Delta only, the mortality was high. That's why I am concerned. They are telling it is not there. We are not testing, but still we are in doubt whether we are having Delta or Omicron. No.
Yes, madam. Even before this wave started, like in the December and November and December also, we had patients with vaccinated status, both dose vaccination, having lung involvement. But one good thing is, all those patients who had lung involvement secondary to after vaccination responded well to steroids, and they went home in a good condition. But now the problem is, we should not be flooding our indoor patients. That is, we should not admit the patients unnecessarily, and we should not be in a position where we are not able to receive the patient who really require hospital care. So our idea should be mainly now the focus is to admit the patient who really require admission. So all other kind of patients can be kept in home isolation and can be followed up.
Okay, what is the protocol of our antiviral therapy? Still the remdesivir is given for everyone or only for the symptomatic patients?
Remdesivir is indicated only if the patient is requiring oxygen, madam.
Okay, thank
And
you,
it is
thank you.
not be useful if it is given more than 9 to 10 days, because that is the viral replication phase will be over by that time. So it should be given at least 10th day from the onset of symptoms, not after that.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions from the audience? Okay, I think we'll wind up the session. I hope the 2 days talks have all equipped you well to judiciously use oxygen as we are getting ready to take a deep dive into the third surge of the pandemic. With that, we'll just conclude this meeting. Thank you all for your patient listening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam. Thank you, all the participants. We'll sign off this meeting. Thank you, madam.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you, Kamakshi and the team. It is a very excellent job what you people are doing during this pandemic with your departmental works and other works also. You find time to do a webinar like this, which is really useful for all the doctors. I really thank all the team people for the excellent job.
And for the benefit of those who are occupied in the clinical work, we have recorded this entire session. And if people wish to get, kindly message me and I can share the recording with of those who are interested in the Telegram app, because it's a business size file, so we can share it in the Telegram file. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.